Atwoli on my immediate right. He is the Kotu Secretary General. Also with us tonight is the Nandi Senator Samson Cherargei. Thank you both, gentlemen. It's good to have you here on Checkpoint tonight. I'll start with you, Atwoli, because you almost sounded the referendum alarm very early on. In fact, at the time, you were talking about it. It has to happen. Just the other day, you said it's not a matter of if or when it will take place. But why now? Why a referendum now?
Normally, I don't want Sister Sophia to go to historical background of constitutions all over the world. But if you remember very well, even the current constitution that we promulgated in 2010, before we went for voting, we had some leading politicians opposed to it in some other areas. But then we have given it a duration of about 8 years, almost 10 years, and we have noticed some other areas that are non-workable. If we want to look at it, we know the problem with Kenyans. When they are looking at a document, they normally peg it to individuals. That is where we go astray. Peg it to a nation and narrow it down into your own life and put it to things like budget allocation, the way you would like to do some budgeting in your own house. See whether it can be able to carry or it can't carry. If you look at it from that perspective, you will find that this is the most expensive constitution for another person. And I would like to tell you that for a young man like the Samson, whom I'm here, my senator, in future he might take over a mantle of leading this country. And if he can't correct such like anomalies earlier, such as this time here, he will have a hell of problems.
So you think 8 years is enough to audit?
Absolutely to audit. Some countries I know have audited for within 3 or 4 or 5 years when they find that the constitution, which is a binding document for a nation, is not working, they look at it.
And we'll talk more about what you think should change. We've had various proposals. But to you, Senator, you're a close ally of the Deputy President, and up until yesterday, he was very vocal against a referendum call. Then he surprised many by saying, bring it on, I'm ready. What, in your view, informed that change of heart?
Thank you, Sophia, for inviting me. I want to say I like what the SG has said. He has said, let us not peg the issue of constitution to individuals. Let us peg to the future of the country, the ability to sustain it. And there is no time that the Deputy President has expressingly been against in total. He has been against because of the disruption of the implementing of the Big Four agenda. And as a government, when President Uhuru Kenyatta is serving his second and final term, which was building on his legacy and the promises that he made to Kenyans before taking second term, that was the solid agenda that we had. And we thought the handshake would now assist in bringing that peaceful environment, cohesive nation, and ensuring that we remain steadfast and focused on implementing the Big Four agenda. Now the question has now changed into why we should have a referendum. But we want to agree, we don't have a problem with referendum. I agree with what the Deputy President has been crystal clear, that let those punda amechoka, punguza mzigo, the people who want the table of executive to be expanded for their own interest and inclusivity, they should sit somewhere in a corner and agree on date, time, and place, and how the questions should be done. But the big question we should be asking, and Kenya should ask themselves, whose referendum is this?
All right, whose referendum is this? Let's listen to the Deputy President. You said he's never been against the calls for a referendum, but here is a clip of the DP speaking on this matter.
Ile tumechaguliwa, tumeingia kwenye viti, ati tunaanza tena, ati tuanze mjadala ingine ya kubadilisha katiba ndio wangwana wawili watatu wapate kazi ingine. Sasa tukiwa tunapangia watu wawili watatu wapate kazi, na mamilioni ya mahasla watapata kazi siku gani? Sisi tunaunga mkono walete mambo ya referendum. Kuna wale wanataka mzigo ipunguzwe kwa sababu punda amechoka. Kuna wengine wanataka mzigo iongezwe na vyeo iongezwe. Hiyo grupu yote waende wazungumuze. Wakisha kubaliana, wakubaliane tena tarehe ngapi wanataka hiyo kura ya maoni ifanywe. Kabla ya uchaguzi ama baada ya uchaguzi.
All right, that earlier clip was in April and the latter was just yesterday. And SG, many times when the DP has talked about this matter, and there are those who agree with him, that it's been made about personalities, creating positions there, we hear him say, for 2 or 3 people. And there are those who feel the same way, that this is about expanding the executive for certain individuals. It has nothing to do with Wanjiku.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
And the lawyer will agree with me, the young man here. He has worked on several memorandum of various companies,
yes,
registration, which are similar to constitutions. I have, for the last 50 years I've been working, I have survived because I'm covered under a specific constitution that covers labor leaders and so on in various trade unions. We survive on constitutions. Mm-hmm. Constitution making, you must have aims and objectives. That is the most important part of it. Mm-hmm. Part of it is that how is it going to serve us? And who are members? Now, once you know who are members, you develop interest. I heard the lawyer asking, whose constitution is this? Mm-hmm. Any Kenyan, even the one who is not born, is a shareholder in that constitution. Mm. So the constitution is made for a purpose. It's not just like that. I know most people fear about talking governance and what have you. But then those, and I'm happy with the proposal from the Deputy President, that those who want to expand the structures in governance, let them have that debate. Yeah. Because eventually it will end up in voting. That is what it's all about in referendum. Mm-hmm. But the purpose of building and constructing a constitution is for those who have developed interest in it. One, like me, I said in March. Yes. When I was talking about it in March, I had seen overborrowing on domestic market. When the government overborrows on domestic market, then it pushes out the private sector to do business. They cannot be able to access loans because it is easier for a bank to loan government. There's a guarantee of getting its money back. And when the private sector is not in business, then you cannot spur economic growth of any given country and hence create employment for young men and women who are coming out of a lot of universities. Yeah. So I had looked at it and I said, why is government borrowing international and locally? It's because it has created so many constitutional offices of which they have got to take care of, some which are useless. Look at 47 counties. Some, their preoccupation is to sell bananas and peanuts. They are not competitive. So the main issue is that, do we need them? We can still go back to the old districts where we had about 22, 21 districts, and we bring down the cost on devolution. Yeah. Now, I want to tell you on this issue of how do we go about it? Yes. To go about it, as I said, every Kenyan has every right. I talked about it in March. People didn't believe me. I was with Jeff. I said the constitution, the only person who answered me was Mukhisa Kitui, that you don't make a constitution with some people in view to occupy positions. This is the politics which is going on. So and then I repeated it during May. You can go to your clip. I said, wakati mziko punda inachoka, yenyewe mziko inaleta chini. When I was talking about it, people thought it was psychophancy or what have you. I was alone. Even during Labor Day, Raila Amolo Odinga, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi were in my meeting, those celebrations. Okay. And they were surprised, why are you coming up with this? Now they're the people who have owned it, I told them on the other side. And let me tell you, Sophia, there is nothing I've said that it has never come to pass in this country. You're a prophet. No, I beg it to people.
All right, let me bring it to Senator, because there appears to be a huge concern, and perhaps many would argue legitimate, and the DP has said that, is it about positions? Because what are these things? And I'd want us to play a clip, if you'll find it, of your governor actually in your county, who talked about that there could be a legislative process. Let's listen to what Governor Sang had to say on what alternatives Kenyans could pursue to make changes as opposed to going to a referendum.
It is too early for us to say whether we will have a referendum or not. The most important thing is for us to identify the issues that we want to address. Some of those issues might not need a referendum. Why must we waste resources in this republic if we don't need a referendum and we can address those challenges? So let us go back to the issues, address the issues. Yale yanaweza fanywa kule bungeni na Chris Wamalwa na speaker wetu Kenneth Lusaka, let us do through the parliamentary initiative. so that we don't have to waste resources if we must not go into a referendum.
So the governor there saying these issues can be canvassed differently. Do you agree?
I agree. You know, I was one of the first people who opposed this handshake. But honestly, in all honesty, there is what we call building bridges. Since the deputy president yesterday accepted that, and of course said the referendum should come, now that we need to do referendum more than the big four, we wanted to agree that some of the issues that building bridges document has said is one, inclusivity and corruption, and issues of ethnicity negativeness. On corruption, what we need to do is to allocate more money to DPP and DCF. On inclusivity, there is a wrong perception and a tired argument in this country that when some people are not part of government, then that government is not inclusive. And that is where now the agenda of bringing the seat of prime minister and 2 deputy prime ministers, having a ceremonial president with 2 deputy presidents or 1 deputy president, having parliamentary system or a presidential system. It is because there are many other avenues that Kenyans we can use, and I agree with Governor Sang when he says we can even use legislative processes. But for example, on the issues of inclusivity, corruption, cohesion of the nation, there was supposed to be a conference on corruption. And then they told us, let us, the Building Bridges team, and I'm wondering a senior elder who has seen it all, a prophet like SG Atwoli is not part of that Building Bridges because he would have assisted them in having a better vision, is that some of those issues not do referendum. And my argument has been this, even if today Kenyans go to referendum, the cost of living will not come down. The 4.5 trillion public debt that is owed to this country will not disappear. The VAT 8% will not disappear. The unemployment and problems that bedevil this country will not disappear into thin air. But these people have made it look flowery and beautiful, so that we are lying to Kenyans that today if we go to a referendum tomorrow, our problems will disappear to thin air. I want to agree, if we have to go for any constitutional referendum, we don't have an objection. It is a good thing for this country. But for us, where we sit as Jubilee, our worry is one. The confusion, you know, Raila Odinga, with a lot of due respect as a former prime minister, has a trademark of confusion. And that confusion he has brought to Jubilee. Now the president and us in government, we no longer focus on the big four agenda. We are now chasing the referendum. In my community, when you are chasing a gazelle, and a squirrel come, you don't abandon the gazelle and just chasing the squirrel. Well, but I know as Jubilee, finally, I know as Jubilee, we will do a parliamentary group meeting. The party leader, His Excellency the President, and Deputy Party Leader William Ruto will take a position on this matter, and Kenyans will know the way forward.
Yes. But are the issues mutually exclusive? Let me bring this to you, because you talk about let's reduce the burden in as far as the wage bill. But many Kenyans, and some even on Twitter, have taken to say that the biggest problem, as the Senator was saying, fine, maybe we're overrepresented, that can be dealt with. But in as far as where we're losing more money, it's the corruption, it's the impunity, it's mismanagement, and all these issues do not need a referendum to resolve.
But you see currently what is the Parliament doing, what is the Senate doing to cover that? We have all those institutions there to tame corruption. Corruption, to me, should not be pegged to issue of Constitution. The Constitution can help us by bringing down the cost of all this, of doing government business, and also saving an ordinary mwananchi from the trauma that we are in now. But the purpose of Constitution, you might not realize the gains immediately if we reduced the number of nominated MCAs, nominated senators, nominated members of parliament, and so on. The other thing I want to say, and with also due respect to my young senator here, you know, when you are unable to face a situation, you create something to appear bigger. As how can people continue crying about one person, or Raila causes confusion? Raila, what is this Raila? It means Raila is a system. And if it's a system, how do you deal with it? Because even the head of state...
So they are panicking. They're
that's what I'm saying.
We are not panicking. We are just exposing.
That's why I'm saying. You can't... I've told the Kenyans there is no way you can wish away somebody like Raila. who got more than 6 million votes and what have you. And what I've said always, that if you want, even William, it is for his advantage, and I'm happy he has proposed amendment of the Constitution. If you wanted to become a president, he should be a president in a governable country.
But what they're dismissing is, and what we heard the DP there say, is that Raila is now pegging the call for a referendum on the handshake, saying that it was part of the deal. And he says that's dishonest.
Let me ask you a simple question.
Yeah.
On the handshake, it was not only Raila.
Yeah.
What is the head of state saying? Which means that the head of state, who did shake hands with Raila, he knows that what they are saying is not related to exactly what they agreed upon. Because he would have come out, he's a shrewd politician, just like William Ruto, just like anybody. These are shrewd politicians. What I'm saying, just a moment, my young man, what I know very well, even in Jubilee itself, there are people who are for referendum. Let us speak the truth. The referendum should not be pegged up on individuals. I said this. Even looking at the structures, we need to look at it, Sophia. Me, I come from Western Kenya. Immediately after election, since we removed Section 2A from the old constitution and we introduced multi-party democracy, multi-party democracy was pegged to ethnicity. It has been very difficult for Kenyans to do business immediately after elections. Some of us, we don't access Kisumu Airport. So the issue of inclusivity, it must be looked into afresh. This does not mean
and inclusivity to what extent? Because you also touched on something that I had Aladwa mention the other day. You said President Kenyatta is serving his second and final term and talked about him being a young man, and that perhaps in view of these changes, you would envision a situation where he runs and or is given a position of, say, Prime Minister, ceremonial president. And Aladwa also touched on that as well.
At that time, I said just as an example, because I was trying to put it this way.
Yeah.
If now, for example, people are crying about Raila, who started his politics career more than almost 60 years ago, people are still crying about him. So if I wanted to run this country comfortably, I would always have a constitution that caters a position for such like individuals who are unattainable or who are strong. That is obvious. Everywhere in other countries they do that. But to tell you about Uhuru now, if we amended the constitution, it will not only be the Prime Minister that the post he can go in for. He can also vie for presidency. And not only that, it is true, he's a young man. He will remain around for some time. Whoever will be leading will require him. It is Uhuru, you cannot equate him to people like President Moi.
Yeah, so you think he should continue, and that's one of the reasons you support this?
Not only in that active position, he might be in an advisory role. He must be given another role to play as an eminent elder now. He might join, but those...
So they should not only be worried about Raila, in your view, they should also be worried about the president.
And even be worried about Ruto, because even the more Ruto will be there, like him, we will never be able to grow in Rift Valley.
All right, I want us to take a break. When we come back, sir, I'll listen